Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Conversations with Yoders Farm. I'm Eldon, and Lowell is with me again today for another podcast episode. Welcome to the podcast, Lowell.
Well, welcome yourself.
Thank you. Great to be here. We're right at the end of May. It's kind of a dreary Friday. And
this has been the theme for the last week.
Yeah, we're trying to work
May
through
27.
Late strawberry season blues when it rains. So how's things been here at the farm? We haven't recorded for quite a while.
Well, I wish you'd upgrade your snacks in your studio.
Right.
Because there aren't any.
Yeah, sorry about that. I didn't realize that you were expecting any.
Well, it's lunchtime, so I kind of was hoping for a few snacks.
Well, if you'd quit looking at your coffee weird, it might get solid and turn into something
This
else.
is actually tea. I
Okay.
had my other 3 cups earlier, but I need my afternoon one soon.
Yeah, no, we pretty much operate on the bring your own snacks kind of thing.
To work?
Here. Yeah.
That's partially true, but...
Yeah.
Yeah, so... You did the question. What did you ask again? How have things been?
How things are.
How are you doing?
Well, this is a podcast about Yoders Farm, so we're
that's what I was wondering. So, do we talk about the recent history, or do you want to go on a step back and talk about the whole strawberry season as a whole?
Well, why don't we kind of give a brief overview of strawberries, tomatoes, and kind of our
where we are right now,
number of things, and then let's talk
current
about
snapshot
strawberry season, and then at the end we have a listener question.
That's dangerous.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, right now we're winding down our strawberry season. Still have some decent picking out there. It has been, unfortunately, this week has been pretty rainy, and it's been cloudy almost all week.
Kind of depressing, honestly.
Right. Emotionally and physically, I don't know how many.
Even for normal people, I've heard some. Yeah.
But anyway, it's not extremely good strawberry growing weather, so... But we still have pick your own going on, and probably will for maybe 2 weeks-ish.
We're also trying to be thankful that it's this end of the season and not right the beginning.
Flat in the middle or something.
Yeah.
Actually, there was a guy in this antidote. How do you say it when it's like a story that someone... It's not... An antidote is like something that's good for something.
I know what you're talking about, but
it's something
I can't think
like
the word
that.
either.
Yeah, you could Google it. Anyway, he was in yesterday, and he said he picked 3 buckets, and he said the picking was... I'm not sure if he was here the day we opened, and he said the picking was better yesterday than it was the day we opened.
Interesting.
But part of that was because they came late in that day. Do you remember? We opened on a Friday.
Yeah.
Picked half the field, and it got hit pretty hard.
I think we kind of got picked out both those first 2 days.
We're really close. So he said they really had to search that time.
Right.
But he felt, I don't know if he came in between then or not, but he felt the picking was better. So I just thought that was interesting.
Right.
In our minds, we're winding down, but when your number of customers drops some,
picking is
you can actually,
pretty decent.
There are, we have overripe fruit in the field, some rain damage stuff, so it gets a little, you have to be choosy.
Right.
And unfortunately, the patch is looking a little weathered out there, and got some weed problems. So if you deal with that and go to the weedy rows, you can find usually bigger and better berries.
Yeah.
So pick yarns winding down, but not done. We will probably continue picking for the store for on into most of June.
Pre-picked strawberries you're talking about.
Yeah, because some of that's because the varieties we have in the fields we pick are different, and some of that's we can keep them cleaned up and picked up, and we anticipate going longer with them, so we might probably use more fungicides in those fields to keep the fruit quality up, so we actually feel like it has a longer shelf life. And
right,
anyway,
especially with all this rain,
all of those things.
Yeah.
And tomato-wise, we are not, we're not in the end game with those either, but we're starting, we try to have off-season tomatoes. The one house we topped it. We went through and topped it. That's to focus all the plant's energy on the last, 5-6 clusters or whatever you're ripening up, and hopefully get some better size on them. So that house will, we've kind of put an end to it by topping it. So we'll probably pick that into June, probably towards the latter part of June. And maybe that one will peter out. And then we plan to take the other one on and probably through the month of July. Just to have, it used to be everyone had garden tomatoes. Well, still, a lot of people still have garden tomatoes, but or field tomatoes come in them. But
yeah,
we're finding with our store here and other things, people are happy to keep buying tomatoes on into July.
So there's a good chance the store will be open until mid-July, late July, somewhere in there.
At least late July, I'm pretty sure, from what I've been hearing from my sources.
Okay, fair enough.
So that's kind of where that is. Pumpkins, I'm starting to think about, fall stuff. We always are thinking the season ahead. I typically don't plant any pumpkins till at least the middle of June, sometimes on into June a little bit. I'll often start with my field or the ones I don't use leftover strawberry plastic for.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I'll plant those first, and then I do
Dad was talking about maybe renting that planter. Is that something you're still thinking about?
He kind of thinks that would be good, but
it would just save you time. But
it would save me time. But I'm pretty fast with my hand planter, so till we would actually get it and get it down here.
Yeah, if it was a little closer, it might be a little more.
The other thing I like is I can plant 3 different varieties and mix it up the row and stuff, and I kind of know where everything is, and I don't know. Sometimes I guess I'm stuck in my ways, but
hey, it's been.
I kind of have a system that works, and I like to label stuff and keep everything. I think it'd be harder to.
Maybe you could train Dawson to help you plant.
But out in where we don't plant on plastic, the planter, I'm sure would be a lot faster.
Yeah,
we're just planting straight jack.
Well, if you're doing like one variety in a 8-acre field, it would be a little different than what we historically have done. Very good. So that's pumpkins, fall stuff, tomatoes, strawberries.
Corn maze, we're probably a month away. No, maybe slightly less than a month now from planting that. So
we tend to plant that a little late, keep it green longer.
Right.
Field stuff.
What's field stuff is all in beans and soybeans and corn.
Right.
Looking fair. Pretty fair. I guess that's one good thing about being diversified. What may not be good for one thing, like rain in May, might be good for another thing. So,
true.
There's that, and I'm behind on my bee work, and it's probably a disaster. So don't ask me about that.
I asked Ricky about his bees the other day, and he was feeling similarly. So.
Yeah, I just haven't had a lot of time to get into the hives like I really should. I try to throw a bunch of space on drawn comb early in the honey flow and hoped that it would keep them from swarming and that they would fill the boxes up.
Yeah.
So now I need to go and actually see what happens.
Sure. All right. Well, I guess we can talk more in depth about the strawberry season. I don't know if... I'm trying to remember when our last one was. It was either just before we opened.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure. So I would say it's been a relatively challenging year. It's we've had worse years and we've had better years weather-wise. So we had a lot of late frosts and freezes, and I think we talked about that in our last podcast.
But maybe not as much as some years. I mean, you were on and off numerous times, but maybe I just wasn't involved.
It felt like I don't know.
Yeah,
but it was
fair
pretty
enough.
bad for that. As far as the weather, the first part of the season was actually pretty decent. Like we had some rain, but it was, I always call it like workable rain. You know, if you get a shot of rain or some showers one end of the day or another, it's these weeks or, days and days of just dreary weather that's just really bad for berries, and it keeps the pick-your-own people away.
Right.
And I mean,
so
bless their hearts, some of our pickers picked in some nasty stuff.
Yeah.
And I was thankful and amazed all at the same time that they
yeah. So like with rain, if you can get picked up before it rains, like pretty good. Green,
yeah, it all helps. If
fruit
is green,
does better,
right? Definitely.
But then, like you're saying, if it's a shower or a thunderstorm in the afternoon, you get some wind overnight or something, and back
and you
to
can
sun
get back
the next day.
Back into the field, even if it's muddy. You can kind of manage. And we had some big crowds out, and they dealt with mud and this and that and the other.
Yeah.
But yeah, but then when it's days and days of it, and other people had it worse than we did. I mean, I keep tabs on. Of course, we have a friend and relative up in the Shenandoah Valley had a nasty hailstorm, and I mean, just boogered his plants up like crazy. And I don't know.
That was like right at the beginning of the season.
Yeah,
right?
he hadn't even opened up yet.
Yeah, I'm curious how things actually worked out.
He's got berries now, but
okay.
I'm sure I don't know if it affected probably over half his crop, I would think. Maybe
yeah, he said it was basically like somebody went in there with a bush hog almost.
Yeah, I mean, the plants just look terrible. And let's see, a few other farms. Well, I know them for a while down east, they had more misty, rainy days than we did. We had some at the beginning and then some at the end of that 1 week. But they had like days and days of just nasty blowing mist and so forth. So
yeah,
I mean, the weather we've just dealt with the best we could. I'm really happy the early part of the season was as decent as it was, and we kind of got through that. We got picked pretty hard, so that helped us deal with the rain. And I mean, there's been, like I told some of the pickers yesterday who were struggling out in the rain, it's not every year is like this. Some years are actually worse.
Yeah.
Like 2018 comes to mind. That was a really wet year.
I don't remember that. I've chosen to block things like that out of my mind, I guess.
Should be blocked out of our minds, but
yeah.
I think we had 10 inches of rain 1 week.
Oh, wow.
So,
it's starting to come back to me. Yeah.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it's been a decent season, I would say. Overall, I think our production is probably better than last year. There's numerous management things that I'm thinking about that we really need to do better at.
What are some of those things?
Well, I was afraid you were going to say that. So we've grown. This is the 10th year we've had pick your own, and then we had berries a few years before that. So we've been through the cycle a lot. But man, strawberries are they're a high
touch.
Yeah, they just require, you just can't plant them and forget them.
Yeah.
So a couple things in the fall. So it was very dry last fall, and we struggled with getting plants established some. And we had some die, not a lot die, but I really wonder if that helped. If we struggled getting the fall growth that we should have gotten because the plant was trying to get a root down, and We struggle with getting the beds totally wet with the drip unless we get some rain on the top to help.
We struggled with getting plants in general.
Yeah, our plants
anyway.
were a little late, and that
Yeah.
didn't help anything. But then if your plant isn't taking off and growing, right away. So, we do have a irrigation system we have set up before, and I thought we could just work with drip last year, and we mostly did okay with that, but I think so this fall, maybe just being quicker to
Get
or
stuff in the
maybe
ground.
even plan to just set up the irrigation system, even though it like shoots a day to do that.
Like the overhead.
Yeah, I just wonder if you get your plants. Of course, if you have rain or two on top, then you're good. So there's always that juggle. You're like, well, maybe it'll rain.
Sure.
But it was very dry last.
Just the water on
October.
the leaves and then down through the holes.
Yeah,
in the
it helps, I
plastic.
think, get that whole bed
Saturated.
I mean, we struggle. Our soils, we can't make the most pretty beds. They're not nice and sandy, and they don't stand up nice. And sometimes they're a little on the cloddy side. It's really hard. In the cloddy beds, your water leaches out the bottom, and it's really hard to get out onto the shoulders and everything. So those things, that would be one thing maybe. If we could at all, I'm trying to make some preparations to get stuff maybe in on a more timely way. If we could get our beds made a little earlier, get our plants. But, I mean, there's only so much your suppliers can do if they're waiting on suppliers in Canada. And maybe, hopefully, the border and labor situation. I don't even know what the labor situation is in Canada, but anyway, stuff has just got to get down here earlier and get in the fields earlier so you can get that fall establishment is so critical.
Right.
I could tell we planted some plants. I got them from a friend of mine who had some leftovers, and these were his leftovers. He'd gotten them some weeks before I did. They were big plugs. I mean, almost too big, really. But they were the first things we planted. We planted them before I got anything in. I guess we had what we grew here, but anyway, they started out the fall ahead, and it looked like the production. I mean, I think those are probably some of the better. That section of the field was one of the better yielding this year. So,
would you ever consider just sticking all of your plants yourself to help with some of that?
Well, we were talking about that too, but I've had a little bit of disease issue here the last 2 years.
I guess there's
fortunately, for the 1 year, was that stuff that we had to destroy them, and I only had 6, 7, 8,000.
Yeah. So I guess some diversity of sources isn't all bad.
It's not all bad when you're dealing with something like strawberries.
Yeah.
Last year it was, I can't even remember, it was something kind of weird, and they looked sort of bad for a little bit, and I treated them with a fungicide a couple of times, and they grew out of it and grew
nice
plugs and such, but it made me a little gun shy.
Yeah,
little
twitchy.
So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna how many we're gonna grow ourselves and so forth. Trying to sort all that out now. So yeah, fall management I think is important. Weed control, I think we could really help ourselves in the fall. Did some of that, but if you can be working on your weeds in the row middles in the fall, you have a couple of shots there to really do some good things that pays big dividends in the spring. And it's just hard. We're open for pumpkins, and we're thinking about chasing white-tailed deer and all the other things we do in the fall. And whatever. Row covers, working around them. Of course, that's later in the year, but all of those. Anyway, if you can do some fall weed stuff, so that's one thing I want to do a better management job of. The other thing is I had a real problem with spider mites this year, which it seems like it's almost gotten worse the last couple years, and I think part of that is we're growing more. It seems to favor certain types of varieties of strawberries. So we're planting more Ruby Junes, we're planting more Albions. It's a bushy, well, it's not a bushier plant, but it's something about them that they like better than, say, Chandlers.
You say spider mites like it better.
It seems like it.
What?
I know Albion, if you're going to grow Albions, they're going to have spider mites. It just is. And
Can you talk about spider mites a little bit? Like, what are they actually? Is it a bug?
Yeah, it's a very small little bug thing, and
it's not a fungus.
No, yeah, it's actually a bug,
yeah,
a mite, and they multiply. And, you know, there's certain thresholds where supposedly they don't cause issues, but they do multiply like crazy.
Yeah,
and they, you know, at their worst, they can practically kill a plant. They can affect fruit quality. They're just really nasty little boogers. The unfortunate thing is that they like a more moderate temperature. So if you row cover, you can really have some. They can be going to town under there, and you have no idea what's going on. So you can kind of be
incubating them under there a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I actually did treat for spider mites before we row covered, but it must not have been very effective, or the product I use is more of a, or I used was more of an adult, like an adult knockdown. But
yeah.
they have eggs and a wide life cycle.
Right.
And so I wonder, I think a couple of fall treatments before row covers, especially on those sensitive varieties like Ruby Junes and Albions. I think if you're going to use row covers like we do, that's one of those management decisions I was talking about. That I think
there's nothing that you could
I've
inject
learned.
or something like that. So like if your row covers are on, you could be doing something.
Well,
about
typically you're not running your drip really when row covers are on.
True.
Yeah, I don't think you'd.
Yeah.
There aren't products like you want actually nice thorough coverage on the plant is if you're using a miticide or something like that.
Yeah.
Is helpful. So that's another thing. And then, so we talked a little bit, we planted later. And some of the same varieties we just mentioned, Albions and Ruby Junes, they really need more growth in the fall. They need more warmth to get established good. Chandlers are more forgiving. They're a little bit more of a cold climate berry anyway. So some research was done years ago, and some people do this where you throw a row cover on them in way earlier than you would be thinking about winter protection, like when your daytime highs are starting to dip down to the 50s or something, 60s, maybe even low 60s, and you just bump that whole temperature profile up. So you keep your night times warmer and your daytimes, it's like a little mini greenhouse in there.
Right.
And you get that little extra fall growth. Well, I was kind of watching our growing degree days, and I wasn't too stressed about it because we actually had a pretty mild fall on into November. It really wasn't that cold. But I think that at some point, well, even into December, we had some mild weather. But your days are a lot shorter on into November and December. And so, and I've talked to some other smart people about this. Like, I just don't think a growing degree day, you can measure it based on temperature. It's your average over 50, I think. But a growing degree day in November isn't the same for establishment as it is in October. So I think being more, anyway, long-winded, but I think being more proactive about, okay, let's just get some covers out to try for a couple weeks, 2-3 weeks. That's all you need, maybe.
October, maybe.
Yeah, or probably early November. We'll watch the weather, but first couple weeks in November could be, and then, that's often the time when you start really getting some deer pressure, and helps you with that, so... Anyway, those are several of the management decisions I'm thinking about. We we had a problem with our ryegrass. Really got out of control this year. We plant ryegrass in between the aisles, the rows to control erosion, and it really got tall. And you generally just treat that with a grass herbicide that doesn't affect the berries because they're different plant types or whatever. So you can use something that's selective for grass, but it gets really hard to treat when your grass is tall. Like you can kill it, terminate it when it's pretty short, but once it gets really tall, and also cool weather, which we had a lot of cool weather this spring. So our patch is weedy now, I would say.
It's a little hairy, yeah.
Hairy, but half of the problem or more is the grass, which we planted.
Sure.
So I think if I can figure out a better way to just keep it stunted, maybe use a low rate of something to try to keep it stunted, I've even wondered. I mean, not everyone plants grass. People on the flatlands, especially, don't do that. So maybe some portions of our field, maybe I could actually get away with not.
Is there anything that you could plant that wouldn't get that big? I mean, rye is just kind of readily available. Ryegrass, yeah. I don't know.
It's just what everyone uses.
Sure. No.
And it's supposed to be. It establishes really easily. Like the seed can lay there for a long time, and then it'll germinate when a rain comes. So
because we usually do the plant the rye like
right after you make the beds.
Before you punch the holes.
You don't want ryegrass in your holes, so that's what we do. And then you give a couple weeks for the wind and the rain to work it off the beds, and then you don't usually have issues with it coming up in your plant holes.
Very good.
So, I think the thing with strawberries is you always, there's never a perfect year.
Well, there's so many variables.
You can always, we need to do a better job of this, and this, and so that's what we're going to try to do. And, that cycle starts very soon.
Yeah.
I mean, we're already making preparations for for this fall.
Lift plastic, and you're ready to start making beds again.
But just plant orders and getting everything in place, I mean, those are all management decisions that happen now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's basically a year-round crop. And I think that's the other thing. Like, you just can't take time off. You can, you need to, but you have to be thinking about the next steps all the time.
Right.
And the people that do strawberries really, really well are just detail oriented, better than I am. So I
don't know.
Learn from them and try to do a better job.
Sure. Yeah, there's just so many variables. Some of them you can control, some of them you can't. And just making that all mesh together year after year, it's kind of like starting a new process every single year.
Yeah, I mean, you're really, really smart farmers, or you're really, really good farmers in general. They're farmers that keep an open mind about things, try new things, and then pay attention to the details. And they're really, really conscious of those details, and they manage very well, and they do a good job.
I mean, that's part of why we have more Ruby Junes and Albions right now in the Pick Your Own. We've been, over the last number of years, tried some of that, and our Pick Your Own people like it when they do well. So there's a reason that we have those.
My biggest problem with them, I think we're kind of in the transition place. I think they do better in a little warmer climate than what we are.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure. Some people are just blown away by them. I really like them, but I'm not sure that I'm blown away by them. I love the berry size, the flavor, all those things. I'm just not sure that I'm getting the yield out of them. And maybe part of it is I just have to do a better job of managing and getting them in on time and some of those things. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there you go. There again, you have variables to work with, and if different varieties have different variables, it just all adds together. Like if you were just doing Chandler, some of these things would be a little more Not, they'd be straightforward or...
Yeah, but, man, then just doing Chandler has its own issues.
Right.
Like,
I mean, there's a reason we don't.
You would have that, like, people were asking me about, oh, have you hit peak yet? Have you hit peak yet? Well, we don't have a peak like we used to. The Chandler variety tends to be a peaker. And yeah, you do have somewhat of a peak, but with having different varieties, it's a broader peak. It's not that sharp thing.
More of a ramp up.
Some of that might have to do with your year too. Yeah. I think it could. But I would be growing, if we had everything in Chandler's that we do, we couldn't keep up. I guarantee you, both in the pick your own patch and
keep up with keeping them cleaned off.
Keeping them cleaned off, picked up, whatever. You'd have this incredible bulge in the middle, and I think like we would have to, I don't know, wholesale to beat the band and
right. So we couldn't keep up during the peak
with the acreage. Right. So we've kind of we've sacrificed some overall yield, but maybe it's more manageable in a longer period of time.
Yeah, fair
type
enough.
Of berry, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's about all that I know to say about where we are now.
And that's all I have to say about that. Yeah, very good. So let's see. We want to do the listener question and then we can kind of wrap up here. Is there something else you want to say?
No. Sometimes it's surprising that we even have listeners, so there's that.
Yeah. Yeah, I should look the guy's name up.
I guess if you listen to me and I listen to you, then there's one each.
I'll look the guy's name up as you're talking a little bit, but
what do you want me to talk about?
He wondered about planting pumpkins into leftover like plastic after strawberry season. Just if you kind of talk about the pluses and the minuses and what goes into that, I guess.
Okay. Well, we've done it since the beginning. Our first year doing pick your own, we did like half of our plastic replanted in pumpkins, and then the other half we took up and then moved our field down. So that's basically what we do now. Basically the middle part of our field is always strawberries, and then we flip to each end. So I'm glad we can at least rotate some of the field, and that's it. It works well, I would say. I mean, as expensive as plastic and drip is right now, you really getting another crop on that for the same money basically is very helpful. And then you have your irrigation there too, so that's a plus. And there's some residual fertilizer, if you run fertilizer through your drip, that really helps those pumpkins get cranking. I think I've heard that some places that get warm, like farther south of here, can have some issues. And like I heard a guy at a pumpkin meeting one time, he said he'd never do that again, plant them on plastic. He was in the warmer parts of North Carolina. So I don't know. I don't have any experience in that. I have at times had some stand establishment problems. Like sometimes everything comes up really good. I just use they call it a beam planter. It's basically a pole, a hollow tube with a foot on the bottom. That's how I plant mine. We, mow the strawberries off, and then you'll probably need to terminate them with some sort of an herbicide, because you don't want your strawberries competing with your pumpkins. So once I do that, then I just go back through and plant into that stubble. And you can leave your strawberry plants, you can mow them fairly high. You don't have to mow them right down on the plastic, because it's sort of sad when your bush hog hits the plastic.
Right.
It just sort of makes you a little sick. So then I just walk along and punch that thing through, and so I usually have pretty good success especially what we've talked about with fall planting and strawberries. You get a rain over the top. If you get a rain over the top of pumpkins seeds, they really pop up. And often there's some residual moisture left in your beds from your strawberries and strawberry seeds and so forth. So they can really pop up quickly. I thought the problems I've had was because of like either insects or something eating the seeds. Someone smart told me that it was them getting too hot because of the plastic. Yeah. And they just quickly rotting. So that's probably a situation where if you had some cool, cloudy weather coming, if you could time it and seed right in front of that, maybe you wouldn't have the issues and they pop up really quickly. Or he said that if I made a bigger hole, then the heat wouldn't be trapped in there in the same way. So, but it's kind of hard to hand plant making a big hole and then put a seed in. That actually would be a quite tedious process. So that's my thought this year. I'm gonna try to just time it right in front of a rain and plant a bunch and try to pop them up right away. And I usually just go back through and fill in the holes as needed and work at that and get the crop established, and then fill in the holes. To me, your pumpkin or your plastic is probably your highest yielding field. So I might not go back through my pumpkins that aren't on plastic and fill in the spots. Well, I do some, but I figure I have limited space where I have all this irrigation and this good stuff, fertilizer. So I try to maximize that. And I do tighten my spacing some on plastic versus out in the field. I think you can drop it down a little bit. I wouldn't get too crazy, but some of the smaller pumpkins and gourds and stuff, I'll plant it pretty tight, 20 inches or something, and then our beds are on 6-foot plastic or 6-foot centers. So that's kind of what I do. Some people said that crickets cause issues with like seedlings and seeds. That might be a thing too. I've heard some people use something to when they're burning the strawberries down to try to hit the crickets as well. I do know that crickets, for some reason, they really like that plastic, and as soon as the strawberries die down, you walk out there and there are a lot of crickets. So.
Yeah. I think the other thing that he was wondering about was lifting plastic after the pumpkins.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, so we do. It's not too bad. You do end up with a mat of vines and stuff, and then you get your first frost or whatever, and they start dying down pretty good. This year we started lifting our pumpkin plastic in, I was trying to think, February maybe, and it did pretty well. I had a little bit of trouble with it kind of gumming up, or that residue catches on your mosh lifter and drags it along and stuff, and so I had to clean some of it off. I had more issues where I didn't get a good strawberry kill and had green strawberries in my pumpkin plastic. I have more issues with that than with the actual pumpkin vines. And also remember there was some guy that liked the pumpkin vines. I guess he was going to grow other crops in the spring on that same plastic, and he felt like the vines laying there over the winter helped from the crazy winds we sometimes get in the winter. It helped the plastic to all stay down and not blow away.
Yeah.
So I guess if you have enough vegetation to keep the plastic down, it might be too much to make it lift really well, but I've had decent luck with lifting it.
Sure.
If you wait. I mean, I think if you tried in November, it would be kind of difficult, but if you wait a few months.
Let the stalks kind of deteriorate. Yeah.
Yeah, because a pumpkin vine is not that. They're just not as tough as some things. They break down pretty easily. But if you get, a bunch of winter annuals or something, it can be a bit of a pain. But I've lifted plastic in July and I've lifted it in February, and I'll take February any day of the month as long as it's dry. Any day of the month, any day of the year, maybe.
I think that's what you meant to mean. Yeah.
All right.
Very good.
This podcast has went plenty long.
Yeah. Sorry, I couldn't find the guy's name. My phone doesn't search properly for some reason.
Okay, well, I'm sure he was a nice guy and a gentleman. And we wish him well.
Appreciate the question. I guess if you have a question you'd like Lowell to pontificate and talk about on a future
I'm not an expert.
episode, you can reach out.
I just do this stuff and try to make it work.
Yeah. Well, I guess we should go do something else a while now.
Yeah, eat lunch.
There you go.
And then pick tomatoes.
All right. Well,
hoping for a good weekend for pick your own. The sun's supposed to finally shine tomorrow, I think. So
it's already brighter outside.
We got a decent rain this morning, but hopefully it's drying some, and hopefully we can get a nice crowd out and have a good weekend or so yet before we wind things down.
All right. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. And as always, you can find out more about Yoders Farm over at yodersfarm.com. More than you could ever want to know about us is over there or something. Probably more than you could ever want to know is on this podcast. All right. Thanks for listening, and we will talk to you again in a number of weeks or something. See ya.
Stay safe.